This time of the year is usually a easy time to be a general manager in the NFL. Praise is not hard to come by, and fans usually halt their skepticism about free agent signings, trades, and draft picks and try to be as optimistic as possible. That linebacker or wide receiver that people didn't like that you took in the third round, normally by this time of the year, people have talked themselves into the optimistic viewpoint of that draft pick rather than being as outraged as they were about it the day it happened. It's just that time of the year. So again, it comes as no surprise that people feel really good about not only Andrew Berry taking this job, but the job that Andrew Berry has done so far. But we must try to take a step back and see how much of this positivity is fluff and just pure optimism, and how much of this is concrete and tangible and evidence of a brighter future ahead for the Cleveland Browns. So what I want to do today is ask the question: are the Browns in good hands with Andrew Berry? Now, as always, before this video starts, I want to remind everybody to please hit that subscribe button and ding that notification bell. The football season is coming up. The Browns are going to be live streaming practices, and I will be reacting to them once those live streams are over. So if you want to make sure you're locked in for that content, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can have that content the second it's ready for you. Now, back to the video. Now, since the offseason is officially over, players have reported, camp has started. Somewhat. I think it's fair to review Andrew Berry's offseason. Now let's start with the first aspect of this offseason, and that was free agency. Now the Browns came into this free agent period with a kind of weird vibe. They had already gotten all of these shiny pieces last season, but it didn't work out. Browns went 6-10. So this offseason, they needed glue. They needed to get the glue together. And one of the reasons I was upset about the firing of John Dorsey was it made it up in the air about whether the next GM they would hire would focus on those glue pieces, right? The pieces that aren't flashy, that every GM wants to bring in as their flagship move. No, the pieces that are just kind of dull, kind of boring on the surface, but they really help put a team together. One of my main things about John Dorsey and when he got fired was I wanted somebody who could build a team. And when Andrew Berry got hired and he went to work in free agency, I think he did a pretty good job of focusing on the small pieces, the glue pieces. Now let's talk about players that the Browns lost this offseason, and then we'll jump into the players that they added. So the Browns lost Morgan Burnett. Morgan Burnett's career is probably over. He had an Achilles tear late last season, so he's going to be out all this season and probably some of next season. And at his age, I just don't think he's going to have another full season in his career, unfortunately. TJ Carey, it made sense that the Browns let him go. Demetrius Harris underperformed. Christian Kirksey, good player, great leader, good person, just never healthy and older. Also, a linebacker is going to command more money than they're willing to pay for somebody like Christian Kirksey, who has a history of getting injured, so it makes sense that he's gone to Green Bay. Eric Kush could care less. He wasn't really a factor last year, was supposed to step up into the guard position, but was not the solution to that hole there all season. Eric Murray got a surprising amount of money from the Houston Texans, but I wasn't surprised to see him go. Demarius Randall, the way the season ended with him in the organization, not a surprise there. It was a surprise that he did not have a better year last year. Joe Schobert, who a lot of people wanted the Browns to keep. I was not one of those people. I thought he'd be too expensive. He left in free agency to Jacksonville. And then Ricky Seals-Jones, who some people miss. I don't know if he fits what the Browns are going to do. He's a good receiving tight end, just not the greatest blocker in the world. And Ardarius Taylor, complete non-factor last season. The Browns released him. So the Browns didn't lose much. They lost Joe Schobert. That's probably the notable and best player that they lost, and probably the only player that they have not sufficiently replaced with some of their additions. And I'm pleased with what Andrew Berry brought in from a philosophical standpoint. Obviously, we'll see how all of this works out in practice, but if we're just looking at the ideology behind these moves and grading that, then I really like what I see here. They brought in Andrew Billings, a defensive tackle from the Cincinnati Bengals, young guy, up and coming. I think they signed him to a 1 or 2 year deal. Adrian Claiborne, they signed him to a 1 year deal from the Falcons. He's a decent backup left end. He's a guy who's a veteran, can fill in, have some big games here and there. Not going to be your starter, but you're not asking him to be your starter. Jack Conklin was a huge get, right tackle. I didn't think they would get Jack Conklin. I thought he would command a longer-term deal that would take him out of the Browns' plans, but he happened to fit in right at the right time, and it made sense. B.J. Goodson, we'll get to him later. They signed him to a 1 year deal. Austin Hooper, they signed to a big money deal. Most money for a tight end, I believe, this season. But he's a good tight end, balanced guy, can block, can run routes, can catch the ball reliably. Exactly what the Browns needed at tight end at that point. Carl Joseph is somebody that they brought in that I think is going to have a huge effect. He's going to start at strong safety. And when you just ask him to be a strong safety and come up and run support and do those kind of things, he's actually really good. Case Keenum brought in to be the backup for Baker Mayfield, which makes a ton of sense. And then you got guys like JoJo Natson and Donovan Olamba, who's going to just try to make the team. And then Andrew Sadeo, who is another piece that you're adding to the secondary. So when we look at the free agent haul versus the free agent loss, you'll see some missed opportunities. I think one of those missed opportunities, whether it's the Browns' fault or whether it's Jadeveon Clowney's fault, is obviously Jadeveon Clowney. That would be somebody that would have helped complete this defensive line and really fix a lot of things that the Browns have going wrong with the defensive line. But for whatever reason, either Clowney not wanting to sign here or the Browns not offering enough money. For whatever reason, no deal got done, even though it looked like both sides were interested, or at least the Browns were interested in signing him. So I'm not going to knock Barry too much because he at least made the effort, and a serious effort, to get Clowney, just couldn't make it happen. And then the other missed opportunity is the veteran linebacker spot. I don't think B.J. Goodson is going to turn out to be the best option available at middle linebacker or as the veteran linebacker in this room. I think you could have gotten somebody older, somebody with more playing experience. I'm just not a big fan of B.J. Goodson being the veteran in the stand-up linebacker room. I'm just not a fan of it at all. I'm kind of weary on that, and I'll talk about more of my concerns about the defense as we get on. But let's talk about the holes that they tried to fill. And this is where I have to give Andrew Berry high marks, because he did exactly what I wanted a GM to do. And if I'm the one giving the grades, these are the things that I'm looking for. They filled the gaps. They did not try to get too flashy. They just went in and did the small things, put the glue together, and make sure that this team had the pieces in the right places, veterans in the right places, especially on offense. He did a masterful job signing Jack Conklin at right tackle. Big deal. Austin Hooper, that's going to be a big deal for Baker Mayfield, somebody who needs a reliable tight end. I think he did a great job adding some veteran presence to this young secondary with Carl Joseph, Andrew Sadeo, and Kevin Johnson. I think they're going to add great depth. I think they're going to make sure that the secondary could be one of the better secondaries in NFL if Greedy Williams can step up and if Denzel Ward can rebound back to what he looked like more his rookie year. All in all, before the season starts, before we know how all these players pan out, from a philosophical standpoint, I would give Andrew Berry's performance here in free agency a A- grade. What's keeping it from being a A+ grade is, again, if he could have brought in Jadeveon Clowney, that would have made it an A+. Also, a better solution at the stand-up linebacker position as far as veterans go than B.J. Goodson. I was expecting somebody more established or better. I was a trade for Sean Lee or somebody like that that would fill that role at the linebacking position. But B.J. Goodson, that's just not good enough there. But it's not a big enough deal that I'm going to make it a whole letter grade drop. Just A-. Now let's look at the draft, and I was hot on this draft. I love this draft as it happened. Now that I've had a few months to sit on this and think about it, what do I think now? Now let's recap what they did with the 10th pick. They drafted Jedrick Wills, offensive tackle out of Alabama. In the second round, they got Grant Delpit, the safety out of LSU, one of the best safeties in college football last year, for the last 2 years, quite honestly. They got him in the second round. That was a tremendous drop for him. Then in the third round, they got Jordan Elliott, the defensive tackle from Missouri, Jacob Phillips, the linebacker from LSU, Harrison Bryant, the tight end from Florida Atlantic. You got Nick Harris, the center from Washington, and Donovan Peoples-Jones, the wide receiver from the university up north. So, I still feel very good about this haul in the draft. You never know. So again, let's look at this from a philosophical standpoint more than how much do I like these players standpoint. And I would say the one thing that is going to be kind of a question mark, just because the guy that people are going to question mark this pick over is also in the division, is going to be the Jacob Phillips over Malik Harrison pick, because the Browns picked Jacob Phillips one pick before Malik Harrison got selected. Both play the same position. Both are similar players. Jacob Phillips does have more upside because he is more athletic, but Malik Harrison, more experienced linebacker. We're going to see who's going to end up being right, but if Jacob Phillips does not turn out to be great and Malik Harrison does turn out to be really good or pretty good, that's going to be a thorn in the side for a lot of Browns fans, because also a lot of Browns fans are Ohio State fans. Malik Harrison went to Ohio State, so that's also going to make it even more sore for Jacob Phillips and the Browns. But that's going to be something that I think a lot of people are going to have their eyes on this situation. But that's really the only thing that I could think about this draft that I would even question doing differently than they did originally. I love all the other picks. I love how they attempted to fill some of these holes here from a philosophical standpoint. At left tackle, you got Jedrick Wills, who I had Vach Lombardi on here during the draft time. Vach is one of the best offensive line experts on this platform, if not this planet, and he loved Jedrick Wills. Vach is normally not wrong about offensive tackles and offensive linemen, period. He's usually pretty right about this. He has a really good eye for this, and he loves Jedrick Wills. He loves his tape, so I'm encouraged from that selection, and so does Joe Thomas. And Joe Thomas is somebody who might know a little bit of something about left tackling. Everybody that I know that specializes or focuses on the offensive line tells me that Jedrick Wills is the real deal, so I'm encouraged about this. Then at free safety, you lose Demarius Randall, but you bring in Grant Delpit, which could end up being a upgrade because Delpit is much more talented than Randall. We'll see if he ends up being a better player than Demarius Randall. They attempted to fill a hole at linebacker with Jacob Phillips, which is a sound decision. Again, people are going to question until Jacob Phillips proves it, whether you should have went with Malik Harrison there, but I like that they addressed that position with that pick. And then defensive line depth, they got Jordan Elliott, who I like for the future. I don't think he's going to contribute early on. It's a good pick from a philosophical standpoint because you're going to need to build this defensive line. You're going to need a replacement for Sheldon Richardson, who's starting to get up there in age. So it makes sense. Everything makes sense. Everything is sound philosophically. We'll see if the players were the right choices, which is a huge part of this as the season goes on. But from a philosophical standpoint, this draft gets an A+ from me. I think they did everything they needed to do in this draft. I think they addressed all the problems. It seemed very philosophically sound. And that's something I'm going to say a lot. But it matters with Andrew Berry because it doesn't happen with a lot of the GMs that the Browns have had walk through Berea in past years. Now, a GM's job is not only just to deal with some of the analytical and roster problems, it's also to deal with the human beings that play this game. And the Browns had some situations come up that, let's be honest here, Andrew Berry handled quite well. Olivier Vernon's contract situation now. This is probably the thing he handled the worst out of all of them. Now, I don't know what negotiations were like. I still feel like $11 million guaranteed for this season is a bit much for Olivier Vernon, but I don't know if that's just what they could get to. Things kind of broke down with the Browns and Clowney, so I don't know what the negotiations were like. I would have just liked it if they could have gotten to a lower number with Olivier Vernon or made that guarantee more incentive-based. I don't love that number, but it's not something that's going to affect the Browns this season or next season because the contract ends next season, and also the Browns have an abundance of cap room right now, so they're going to be fine on that front. I just would have liked to see the dollar amount go down on Olivier Vernon's contract. Speaking of the dollar amount going down, let's talk about a player who is experiencing the exact opposite in Myles Garrett, whose dollar amount went nowhere near down, went up, 5-year, $125 million year, an average of $25 million per per year. They also signed him before Nick or Joey Bosa got their money, which meant that they actually got underneath what the ceiling is going to be for a top tier defensive end for a few years now, because Joey Bosa got $27 million a year. Nick Bosa will probably get $30 million a year from somebody. That number is going to keep going up and up, while Miles is going to stay at 25. And that is a good thing. You locked up the best player on the team for 5 more years at what I feel like will be either a decent number or a really good number for the Browns in the future. It depends on how the cap raises or lowers. We don't know what that's going to look like, but that was a very sound ideal by Andrew Berry. When you avoid any conflict with Myles Garrett, you show that you have his back after everything that went down last season, that you support him, and you get your best player guaranteed on your team for the next 5 years without having to pay him the top dollar. Sound move. Very good move. I'm going to give him an A in this part of the offseason because, again, nothing became a storyline. Nothing about this offseason or how Andrew Berry has handled it has given you the impression that the Browns are incompetent. Now, again, this comes with the caveat that this is all on paper, right? We don't know how things are going to go down during the season. We don't know how he's going to adjust. We don't know how quick he's going to move on his feet. That's a different review. We don't even know how these players are going to pan out. But what we do know is what the roster looks like and what it seems like at this point. All in all, I think he's done a great job with most of the roster. I have a huge question mark on the defensive line. Now, from a philosophical standpoint, I think he tried to address the defensive line. I just don't think he was successful in doing it. Again, it's all philosophically sound, but will it be sound in practice? I don't know. And the big question of that is the defensive line. But if we're looking at the offseason and how he's handled things in all, I would give him a A-. I think the defensive line questions and the experience at linebacker are a little bit much of a problem to justify giving him a A+. But I think he has done a good job here building out things and handling things and managing things and just running this organization. So I would give him a A- for the offseason. Let's see if he gets a or A- for the regular season. We would certainly hope so, right? That's my thoughts on the job that Andrew Berry has done so far this offseason. Let me know your thoughts on the job that Andrew Berry has done this offseason in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.